Okay, today we're going to work on page 237, which is actually 6.3. We're going to skip those first two pages, and we're going to look at how to simplify fractions. Sometimes you might hear these two words together, simplify. It's the same thing. Your parents may know it as reduce a fraction. So those two words can be used. We don't use the word reduce anymore just because it's kind of misleading. To simplify a fraction means to get it down to a fraction that has no other factors in common other than one. Okay? So to be in simplest form, sometimes you'll have a question like, is it in simplest form? Well, it is that equal. Simplest forms mean when only the number one is the only, there's that word again, factor. So that is something to keep in mind. Now today I'm going to show you 4 steps to complete this problem. And I actually gave you the notes for this already. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go back to chapter 5 when we had to list out factors. And to do that, we listed them out with the rainbow method. So on my sheet of notebook paper today, I am going to do 3 steps. For step 1 is we're going to look at the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so our first problem on number 1 on page 237 is where you're going to start. And step 1 is to use the rainbow method and list the factors of each numerator and denominator. List the factors. All right, so we're going to do that together right now. All right, the factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. And that's the only factors. And we're going to do it for 10. 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Okay, so now step 2. Find the greatest, I don't want to spell that right, common factor. Another, you might hear this called sometimes the GCF. That's called the greatest common factor. So we're going to go right back up here where we listed out the factors, and I'm going to circle any factors that they have in common. Well, I see 1 and I see 2. Now, the only thing about 1, if we circle 1, well, anything that I divide by 1 is going to be 1. So we're going to get rid of 1. 1's never going to be considered unless we're looking to see if it's in simplest form. So we found the greatest common factor. That's the only one that they have in common other than 1, and that is 2. So the greatest common factor is 2. Now, step 3. Step 3. We're going to take our original fraction, which is 8/10, and then we're going to divide whatever we do to the top, we're going to do to the bottom. So we're going to divide by, so you're going to divide by the greatest common factor, the GCF, the numerator and denominator. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, so our new simplest fraction from 8/10 is 4/5. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to write in my book, I had to divide by 2, and that gave me 4/5. All right, so that one was not too bad. All right, we're going to do another one together, okay? Let's take a look. I got to find me a sheet of paper here. I ran out of that one. Let's take a look at number 2. Well, first of all, number 2 should be pretty easy just to look at because anything that's half on the numerator and that of the denominator, we know is going to be equal to 1/2. But we're going to go through the steps first. So we're going to write 6/12. And the first thing was step 1, going back to our little chart, our paper, is we're going to write out the multiplication factors of 6. 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Then we're going to write out the factors of 12. 1 and times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. All right, step 2, circle the greatest common factor. All right, so what do I see? I see 1. Remember I said 1's not considered. 2, I see 3. It's the same. Oh, and I say 6. Now then I'm going to find the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor is actually, the highest one is 6. So I'm going to take my original fraction. Step 3 says I need to divide the top and the bottom by the greatest common factor. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. See, we knew that was equal. So we're going to write that in our blank. All right, let's do number 3. I'm going to draw a line. We're going to do number 3, which is 2/10. Now, on this one, I'm going to show you a little shortcut. Sometimes, not always, the numerator is going to be the greatest common factor. And if the numerator can divide into the denominator, then it will be the greatest common factor. For instance, if just to prove, I'm going to write out the factors of 2 and write out the factors of 10. All right, I see that 2 is the greatest common factor. But if 2 can divide into 10, then we can just take a little shortcut and go ahead and say, okay, 2 is the greatest common factor without having to do the rainbow method. So we can skip that rainbow method sometimes, not always. So if I divide 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So there is a shortcut. If the numerator can divide into the denominator, that will be the greatest common factor. All right, so that's 1/5. That's number 3. Let's do number 4. Now, number 4 is a good example of showing you the shortcut will not work. So we've got 6/8. 6/8. 6 cannot divide into 8. They are both even numbers, so that might give me a kind of a clue what's going to be the greatest common factor. So I'm going to go ahead and write out the factors of 6. 1 and 6, 2 times 3. I'm going to write out the factors of 8. 1 and 8, 2 and 4. All right, so what is the greatest common factor? Look in that list and see. Okay, if you said the greatest common factor was 2, then you were right. So the greatest common factor is 2. So step 3 says divide by the greatest common factor. All right, that's going to give us 3/4. So I'm going to write that in. Okay, and that's basically it. You're going to work on your own here, and you're going to do step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you look, I'll get you your little sheet to look at real quick. Hold on. Look at your sheet that says how to simplify fractions, and those 4 steps are listed out for you. Number 1, use the rainbow method for the numerator and the denominator. Step 2, then find the greatest common factor. Divide, once you get your greatest common factor, divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, and that will be the same number. And then you're going to simplify. Basically, once you divide, then you'll get your simplest. Here's an example. 4/8. You write out the rainbow method. Circle 4 is the greatest common factor. Divide by 4, top and bottom, and that will give us 1/2. And you're going to do that for this whole lesson. You're going to finish. You're going to go through number 13. So you need to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now, I want to go down to number 10 real quick before we finish. It says, tell whether the fraction is in simplest form. Now, going back up to here, when is it in simplest form? When only 1 is the only factor. So, yes, you'll have to go through here and look and see which ones are in simplest form. So I'm going to come over here and write out the factors for 2 and write out for the factors of 8. 1 and 2, 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Oh, 1 is not the only factor. 2 is a factor. So if I go back, it says, tell whether the fraction is in simplest form. No, it is not in simplest form because 1 and 2 are factors. Only if 1 is a factor. Let's do number 12. I'm going to let you finish and I'll show you how this one works. The factors of 5 are 1 and 5. The factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Now, looking at that, I see 1 is a factor, but there are no other factors. So again, my question is, tell whether the fraction is in simplest form. Well, when 1, going back to our notes, when only 1 is the only factor, that's going to mean it's in simplest form. So looking at number 12, 1 is the only factor. So yes, it is in simplest form. All right, just to practice, you're going to finish these problems and then go to 6.3 and complete that practice page. Let me know if you have any questions.